Hello everybody, welcome back to another show. Today we're looking at a camera from dating, funnily enough, from 1959 again. And as you can see, this is called an Aries, or Aries I think is the Japanese pronunciation of it. And this is the PENTA 35. I'll zoom you in a bit more, you can have a closer look at it. So 1959, this is much the same as the Kodak 66 I looked at in the previous video. It's hard to get the focus spot on. 35mm single lens reflex, non-interchangeable lenses. So this is a result of converting a rangefinder camera, which these previously were. Aries are sort of semi-known for their rangefinder cameras. They started producing cameras in 1940 and 1950 they started producing cameras. The company only had a 10-year lifespan, so this is one of the last cameras that they released. There's a PENTA 35, there's also a reflex 35, which I think is a slightly upgraded version. Might be wrong on that. Any Aries experts out there, please let me know. Not an awful lot known about these. They don't appear very often, and there's very few videos on the internet about them. But basically they were a rangefinder manufacturer who converted a rangefinder camera by basically putting a mirror box in the middle of the rangefinder and sort of redoing the body a little bit. Still uses a leaf shutter built into the lens. Turn this around and zoom you in. You can see there is all the controls on the front as you would expect. But a leaf shutter in a single lens reflex, how's that going to work? That's an interesting one. Topcon, which I have featured before on the channel, they did a similar thing with their cameras, in that they had leaf shuttered cameras. Slightly different arrangement. This didn't have interchangeable lenses, but it did have the auxiliary lenses that went on the front. So there was a wide angle converter and a telephoto converter, but the lens itself is rigid. It's part of the camera itself. So for controls, on the front here we've got a shutter speed selector. So we have shutter speeds from B going all the way up to 248, 1530, all the way through to 500. And then we also have an aperture ring. So this is a 2.8 lens, so the usual range of apertures all the way down to 22. And then for focusing, that's this big lever at the back here that we can use for focusing. I can get my fingers on it and get the focus in control. I don't use the autofocus because it just hunts on this camera. It's not very good with the autofocus. But yeah, this is the focusing ring. Common issue with the Aries rangefinders is the focus rings are quite stiff, and this one is starting to go. The grease is starting to get a little bit old, and it will need stripping down and re-greasing really to get it back to being fluid. But there's your focus control on the front. On the front we don't have an awful lot else. There's a little badge down here, you can see that. And the lens on this is one of their own lenses, Aries camera, serial number Q Coral. Their lenses were called Coral, which is interesting, and that's a 5cm, so that's a 50mm in today's terms, f2.8. Does appear to have coatings, as you can see. It's supposed to be very, very good lenses. I've not shot a film through this yet, so I'm interested to see. On the bottom we have an offset tripod bush. I'm not overly keen on that, I prefer them in the centre. You can hear it has a Seikosha SLR shutter. Over here we have the selector for whether you want to use electronic flash or manual, and the self timer as well on this with a little guard. You can see by the paint on the lever, when you move it, the painted lever will show through the little holes in the bottom. Quite fiddly to move, but that's good because you can't really change the settings too much. Just leave that on X. A couple of lug straps. Did come with a case, but the cases, they don't survive, to be honest. Very rare do you get a decent case. On the top spin it around. Again, sort your focus out. You have the film advance lever. Look at this nice metal. It's a very heavy camera, this one. So your film advance lever, your shutter release, threaded for the usual cable release. And here you have a lever which is for advance or rewind. So this is the lever you'd use to disengage the sprocket drive when you want to rewind the film at the end. A film plane indicator, useful for macro work, and the now sort of standard film rewind crank, which does pull up, but I don't believe it opens the back. I think the back is on a little catch at the side here. There we go. So we can open up the back. Here you can see the pressure plate, the guide for the cassette. There's a little roller here, and it looks very much like every other sort of 35mm camera film. Got a take-up spool, sprocket drive, only moves one way. Guides for the films, and this is where your film cassette will go. And if you look through, you'll see that there's no focal plane shutter, which you would normally expect to see here. The shutter's in the lens, and because the shutter's closed off. So if I advance the film, as you would do to set the camera up for taking a picture, you'll now see the secret of how it works, in that there's this blind here, a bit like the Hasselblads with the barn doors at the back. There's this blind here that blocks the film off, and the actual lens itself is now open, so you can actually see through the viewfinder because the mirror is in the down position. Put it around this way, maybe we can see through to the back. So the mirror is down, the leaf shutter is open, and this little blind at the back is keeping the film from the light, the light from the film. When you fire the shutter, a lot of things have to happen. The leaf shutter has to close, this blind has to get out of the way, then the shutter fires. The mirror doesn't return. So when you're taking the picture, the mirror pops up, and in here it just blacks out completely. You can't see anything. So it's not an instant return mirror. The only way the mirror can return is by winding on again. There we go. That puts it back in where you can see through and compose, etc. Very simple camera, no light meters, no batteries, totally mechanical. Pretty reliable, I think. Very high quality. These were very expensive back in the day. Very expensive cameras. But yeah, the shutter's really quiet. It's the mirror that's making the noise. And it's only going one way, it's only going up. It's not coming back down. But this was their idea for turning a rangefinder into an SLR. Quite late into the game, really. SLRs have been around for quite a while before that. 35mm wasn't a really very well regarded film stock. Most people were still shooting on medium format. The quality was a lot better. Films in those days were not as good as they are now. In spite of digital film, development still goes on. Films are still getting better year on year. So let's have a go at loading it, see how we get on with that. I think I've got a film here that I can demonstrate how to load. If you've seen me load any other 35mm cameras, you know this never goes well. So what we got here today, we've got some Fuji. So this goes up out of the way, the film goes in that way. Here's your leader, this sticky out bit goes at the bottom. You pull it across. I'll take my glasses off so I can actually see what I'm doing. We've got a slotted take-up spool, so this slides into there. Move that out of the way, and it tells you on there, put the film in like so, and advance it to make sure that it lines up with the sprockets, which it's now doing. So that looks okay. Close the back. As you know, I always recommend taking up the slack so that when you advance you can see this is moving, so you know that the film is actually moving through the camera. So we just advance this, the frame counter does reset. So we just got to wind this a few times until we get to number 1. It's usually three times. There we are, actually on number 2 now, so it's twice. You wind it on. So that's how you would load the camera. To unload it, you would turn this dial. Sorry, I got my sausage fingers in the way, till the arrow's pointing at the R, and then you should find that you can wind the film back into the canister when you've exposed it all. And now I can feel it's just come off of the spool. So I open the back up. There's a very small catch at the bottom. There you can see the film's been wound back in. Just lift this winding handle part up out of the way. Don't cut your nails too short, because you will need them. And there comes your film back out of the camera. Very nice camera. This was their hope for the future. This is what they thought the future of cameras was going to look like for them. And yeah, let's just say they didn't really think about it or look at the market and the way things were going. Because there was a certain other camera manufacturer had the same problem. They needed to convert their rangefinders, which were very successful, into an SLR, and they went the interchangeable lens route. And the other main camera, the main camera of 1959 that was launched, is the competition, the Nikon F. Brand new mount with the Nikon F mount, same idea. This didn't come out originally in 59, the photomic head came out later. This is a metering head. If you look at this camera, it's very, very closely related to their rangefinders. If you look at the top plate, you can see an awful lot of information and detail that has come from the rangefinder cameras, the Film Advance, for example. So this is another example where a rangefinder camera has mutated into an SLR, but this was a whole system camera. This one they really went to town on. They thought about most of the things that needed to be done. It does betray its rangefinder roots in that it's another camera where the whole back comes off. If you open the back up, there's more, there's nothing more rangefinder than the whole back coming off. So Nikon had the same idea. Take a rangefinder camera, stay up there, that prism's really heavy. Take a rangefinder camera, put a mirror box in it. Aries had the same idea, but they didn't think about lenses, and Nikon did, in that they created the Nikon F mount, an iconic mount that's been around until quite recently. Obviously when cameras went mirrorless they changed it. A new mount was required because obviously the distance between the lens and the film got larger, because you had to stick the mirror in the sort of the line. But yeah, this came out in 1959. This was a huge success. Nikon went from strength to strength through the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, and they're still one of the top manufacturers today. Aries, unfortunately, they went bankrupt. They went out of business because this camera doesn't even have a self-timer on it. You can see this one's got a self-timer. It's got a lot more features on it than the F. So this was the future. This bankrupt, out of business. It just goes to show you. Taking the gamble. Nikon took a big gamble when they created the F series, and it's stood them instead for a long, long time. There you go folks, there's the video for today. The Aries PENTA 35, PENTA for PENTA prism. There's no way you can change the prism on this, you can't change the focusing screens, whereas the F is a real systems camera. They were way ahead of their thinking at the time. Unfortunately for these, it was the end of the line. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to comments, questions, queries, etc. down below. A like and a subscription is always well appreciated. It's nice to see the channel's continuing to grow quite strongly. and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.